Hey guys, it's Chrono. Today I'm going to be reviewing the HiFiMan Sundara, which originally retailed for $500 and have since come down in price to $349. When I first tried the Sundaras about a year ago, I wasn't really a big fan of them because there was a significant and noticeable roll-off in the bass, and the upper mids as well as the treble came across as a little harsh to me. However, it seems that there's been some sort of revision to the pads in the Sundara that not only have made the headphones more comfortable, but have actually fixed a lot of the sound issues that I had the first time I tried them. And honestly, now they really impressed me and have become probably one of my favorite headphones under $500. However, before I continue spoiling the conclusion of this video, let's get right on with the review. So, first up, as per usual, is power requirements. Now, HiFiMan advertised these as easy to drive, but from my experience, they actually have been sort of hard to drive. I had a harder time driving these than I did the Sennheiser HD6XX, the DT1990 Pro, and even my LCD2. So, for power requirements, I'm definitely gonna list an amp as necessary. Alright, so moving on to the build quality. So, the build quality on these is actually very nice. It feels very solid, it feels well put together. It's made almost entirely out of metal with the exception of these plastic bits here on the headband that house the extension mechanism. The only point of concern here is that, I don't know if you can see it here on the camera, but when you use the extension mechanism, it actually scratches the paint on the inside of the headband. So I'd recommend that once you get a good fit on these, don't play around with it too much because you don't want to keep scratching that. And of course, there's the caveat that this is a HiFiMan product, and they don't have the best track record when it comes to build quality and driver longevity. So just keep that in mind. Moving along onto comfort, these are actually extremely comfortable to wear for very long periods of time. Unlike other planar magnetic headphones like Odysseys, these are actually very light, so the weight is not an issue. The pads aren't the thickest pads, but they're very comfortable. Whatever foam they're using here, it's very soft. I don't think anybody will have an issue with these. The pads have a slight slant to them so they fit better on the head. That's probably to compensate for the ridiculous lack of swivel. I think that's something that might be an issue for some people, but at least the chassis has enough flex to where it can kind of compensate for that. Overall, comfort here is very good, but the lack of swivel might prevent some users from getting a good seal on the headphone. So now moving on to what is probably the most important part, and that is of course the sound, starting off with the bass. So the bass in the Sundaras is very good. It has very good extension, it goes way down, it has a very good sense of depth. And I was also pleasantly surprised to find that these actually have a fairly good punch and slam quality, which is something that I did not expect from these. I think that in the bass department, it definitely outperforms the Sennheiser HD660S, and even though it doesn't have as much punch and slam as the DT1990 Pro, these do have better extension and detail, at least in my opinion. I definitely think that most listeners will find the bass here to be very well defined and very enjoyable. Okay, so now onto the mids. The mids on the Sundara are very good. However, at least in resolution, I do think that they lag behind a little bit behind the DT1990 Pro and the Sennheiser HD660S. I do think that the Sundara have a little bit more grain in this area. However, the tonality here, its default tonality is fantastic. I usually have, a couple problems with mids in most headphones, but these are just so natural sounding and correct. I can only really describe them as neutral, and if it wasn't because I like warmer sound signatures, there would be nothing that I would change in the mids. The only thing that I would actually change is that there's this small dip at around 2K that makes them sound a little thin. But I mean, aside from that, really, the tonality of the mids here is basically perfect, and I don't see any reason to change it. It's very rare for me to find a pair of headphones that out of the box has this great a tonality. Similarly, the highs have a great tonality. I mean, there's really nothing I can think of that I would change, because once again, the tonality here is very close to what I would describe as neutral. And I think when you compare them to the HD660S and the DT1990 Pro, the highs here, the tonality is a lot better out of the box than on either of those two headphones. As far as resolution is concerned, I think that the resolution in the highs here is on par with the HD660S, and I think both of them have a better detail retrieval in the highs than the DT1990 Pro. So as I mentioned already, the highs here, I think that I would describe them as neutral, and they do lean a little bit towards bright, but they're in no way fatiguing, harsh, sibilant, or anything that would make them unpleasant. They're just very well articulated. The only thing that I'm missing here is that I think they could use a touch more air above 10K, but I mean, aside from that, again, just fantastic highs. Their tonality is just spot on. Now, when talking about Soundstage, I think that they are significantly better than the Sennheiser 600 series headphones, although those are, fairly narrow. But they do fall behind the DT1990 Pro. I mean, the Sundaras have nowhere near the soundstage of the DT1990. The DT1990 are much wider. Similarly, the imaging is better than on the 600 series Sennheisers. There's no issue or gap between left and right. However, the center image is a little weak. So in that department, again, the DT1990 Pro does better than both, the Sennheisers and the Sundara. Where the Sundara does do better for images than either of the other two is that its instrument separation is much better. I have a much easier time, identifying different instruments and vocals in busy passages with the Sundara than I do with the other headphones. So just to close off the sound section of this review, I would like to go over dynamics. So as I covered earlier, the dynamics in the bass are actually very good. They have a very competent, punch and slam quality. The microdynamics are also very good. I think that at their price point, the Sundaras do a fantastic job of recreating the pressure and tension behind instruments, which gives them a much more lively and realistic presence in the mix. So now just to touch on EQ for a second, my EQ for these is basically the same as Metal 571's, with the exception that I lower the upper mids just a little bit, not because they really need it, but because I prefer a warmer tonality, and I think that works better for the music that I listen to the most, which is rock. And for the same reason, I add that slight decrease at around 7K. Of course, this EQ also, bumps up the bass a little bit, just to give it a little more authority and fix that slight recession at around 2K. Again, I don't think the EQ is necessary on the Sundaras, but if you want to give them a slightly warmer tonality like I do, I'll leave that EQ down in the description. So I know I spoiled this, in the intro of the video, but I mean, at $349, I really think that the Sundara is an unbeatable value. It is very rare to find, a pair of headphones that straight out of the box has such a fantastic tonal balance that doesn't even require me to use or think about EQ. With that being said, I do think that the only challenge that the Sundara faces is that HiFiMan build quality, which is somewhat questionable. So yeah, for anybody looking for a headphone between $300 and $500, I seriously suggest that you give the HiFiMan Sundara some consideration. Anyways, that is all for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, find it helpful. If you did, consider dropping a like or even subscribing to the channel for more future content. Until next time, this is Chrono signing off.